balance between accepting Ellen White authoritatively as a prophet and being flexible in viewing her writings, remaining open to her flaws, errors, theological and historical issues. So how do you wrestle with this?
Well, she was a human being, and human beings have flaws. If you're looking at the Bible and you think of prophets with flaws, how about Balaam? How about Peter? How about Paul, for that matter, who flew off the handle and split with Barnabas and rejected Mark and says, I don't want to have anything to do with him. And then years later says, well, if Mark can come over here, he's kind of useful to me. Paul changed his mind, but prophets are not perfect people. And they're also not all-knowing. Prophets have access to information that we don't have, and therefore need our careful attention. They also have information from God only on what God chooses to send to them. And you say, well, if a person's a prophet, then they should know everything. No. John 16:12. Jesus said to his disciples, many of whom were prophets, apostles, he says to them, I have many things to tell you, but you can't handle it now. There are things a prophet can handle and things that they can't. And if you study the life of Ellen G. White, you will see that she's a different person in the 1890s than she is in the 1850s. She was very much afraid of God in her early experience. Later on, she sees the beauty of God's character and his incredible mercy and so on. Desire of Ages, Steps to Christ, these are incredible books. She didn't write them in the 1850s because I think she herself needed to come to a place where God could share something that wouldn't break her. And remember, she was the weakest of the weak. God was working with somebody who didn't have a lot of natural ability to do what she did. And so all of her life she was taking lessons in writing skills, etc. All of her life she was finding people who are better at writing than she was and say, hey, can you write this up, and then I'll check and make sure you understood me. And so many of her writings were carefully edited by others and reflect what God shared with her, but also demonstrate that, you compare her handwritten manuscripts with a book like Desire of Ages, and you can see the difference. So prophets have their limitations, and if we don't realize that, we may overstate what God is trying to say through them. And I think you can undermine Ellen White, and you can undermine the Bible by overstating what they're saying as well as by underplaying what they are saying. So I just like to see a balance there in how people relate to Ellen White.
Yes, good position. And some would say that when she says, God showed me, that means that 100% perfectly accurate message is portraying, and that nothing more can be added to it. So what is your opinion?
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes when she says God showed me, she's speaking very much, this is straight from God. There are other times where she says God showed me, and then there's several paragraphs that were copied from a non-Seventh-day Adventist author. So is it God showed me in vision, the same thing that this author wrote years ago? Or is she simply saying God showed me, meaning these are ideas that God would approve of? But this author wrote it up better than I could, so here, there it is, you see. So God showed me, you can read that a couple of different ways. And I think it's wise to be cautious about over-reading some things as well as under-reading them. Some people, a lot of people, everybody I guess, we love certainty. We love everything packaged up with a nice little bow on it. The reality is our certainty is always short of ultimate truth. There's so much that we have yet to learn. So much, God has given us in the Bible what the human race can handle. It's only the beginning of ultimate truth. You realize everything we know about the universe, we know, I'm not talking about the Bible now, but just scientifically, everything we know about the universe is from one standpoint in the universe, looking out from Earth. And there's dust clouds and stuff that completely block out portions of our view of the universe. So it's like somebody standing on a mountaintop, looking out on a cloudy day, looking out and saying, I now know everything there is to know about this world. Obviously not. You see, our knowledge is extremely limited. And do you have time for the ladder of humility? This is something I heard from one of my professors many years ago. He says, I may be a smart person. I've got a PhD and all the rest of that. But compare what I know with what everybody on Earth knows. That's an infinite leap, isn't it? But the ladder goes even higher. Compare what everybody on Earth knows with what everybody on Earth could know given an infinite amount of time and effort. Another infinite leap. But compare that with what everybody in the universe knows. And then there's one more ladder step. Compare what everyone in the universe knows with what God knows. And when you realize you and I are at the bottom of that ladder, I get humble quickly.
Yes, that helps a lot. Thank you so much. And just wanted to ask on previous question, did Ellen White sometimes say that she was shown in a way similar to when we would say, like God has confirmed that I should do something or similarly? Do you agree with that maybe?
Yeah. I'm not an Ellen White expert, in terms of having studied all of those passages and so on, but it would seem to me that I was shown sometimes she's introducing a specific thing that she saw in vision. Sometimes I was shown means this idea is something that I think God would approve of, and someone else can write it up for me. I was shown can sometimes simply be, I came to understand, sort of a human process. So I think you'd have to look at each of those statements, and some of them are clear, some of them may be more ambiguous. But I guess the bottom line is we don't have to know everything in order to follow what we know. Follow what you know. What you are sure of, follow that, and God will give you more. If anyone is willing to do His will, he will know. So as we study hard, as we obey, etc., God opens up more and more to us. But it's a lifelong process, I think, for all of us. I can hardly have guessed 30 years ago where I would be today. Because my life experience the last 30 years has just opened up windows that I didn't know. Even though I was a PhD and a full professor, there's a lot that I didn't know 30 years ago that I do today. And probably a lot that I don't know today that maybe I will know 10 years from now.
Yes, thank you so much. And the last question about her, please. I just want this to be clear. What would you say to those who reject her prophetic gift, and in what does her prophetic ministry manifest the most, according to your opinion?
Well, certainly those who reject her gift, first of all, I would say she herself always pointed to the Bible. So if a person says, I can't handle Ellen White, it triggers me in negative spiritual ways and stuff, I would say, concentrate on the Bible. Give it your all, and so on. You're not going to go wrong studying the Bible with honesty, openness, obediently, humbly. The Bible will not lead you astray. But for those who appreciate the Bible but have also spent time with Ellen G. White, I think the fruits are there. Does she say some things that seem backward to us today? Well, once again, God meets people where they are, and he keeps, giving. God does not give her 21st century scientific knowledge. He didn't give her that. When it comes to scientific knowledge, I think a medical researcher said that she tracks with modern day medicine scientifically. She tracks about 50%. And that makes sense to me, because if she's going to convince people in the 19th century, she can't use 21st century scientific arguments. They would reject it because it would make no sense. So you have to argue for something on the basis of what people know at that time, or what they think they know. But the same medical researcher said that when it came to what is healthy, the facts about health, she was right almost 100% of the time. And that's a scientific study, that people can look at. To me, she knew things about health that nobody else in the 19th century knew, including the greatest medical researcher of the century, John Harvey Kellogg. He's right about 40% of the time today. And he was the best that they had in the 19th century. Ellen White tracks almost 100% with the conclusions of medical science today, of health understandings. So I think one person once said, if you were to cover the state of Texas in silver dollars to the depths of 12 meters and throw one reddish coin into that pile, okay, that one coin would be the chances that Ellen White got all that by herself, by accident. To me, it's too compelling that God spoke to her in ways that he doesn't speak to me. That her being that accurate on health issues so many years ago says to me she must have had access to information that the great medical researchers of her day did not have. Was it absolutely perfect medical information? Well, eventually we'll probably know. But it was perfect enough that people talk today about blue zones, and that the Seventh-day Adventist approach to health is one of the most effective on earth, and the only one that is replicable. Loma Linda could be replicated in other places, and people are trying to do that. There are several cities in North America following the Loma Linda model to see if they can have similar outcomes 30, 40 years from now. So something there is special. All the other so-called blue zones where people live, extra long are geographical anomalies. A small group of people isolated for 1,000 years develop a certain lifestyle that ends up being very, very healthy. But at Loma Linda, people learn that lifestyle. They come from every racial and religious background, and the lifestyle is what brings the results, so you can replicate it. So none of that happens without Ellen G. White. I remember a conference where there were many historians of 19th century religion who didn't know anything about Ellen White and were introduced to her. And their reaction was basically, you're telling us there was a woman in the 19th century who founded a denomination, who founded a medical school, who founded the world's largest Protestant educational system? Why haven't we heard of her? This is amazing, And these are people who are very, very knowledgeable, from Harvard and Yale and all these other places. Very knowledgeable, but kind of like, whoa, this woman is amazing. How come we haven't really heard of her? So, and they often, some of the critics were there in the same conference, and it was these non-Seventh-day Adventist scholars that were saying, everybody plagiarized in those days. She's amazing. You should be proud of her. So to somebody who just doesn't want to deal with Ellen White, if you're open and honest, faithful with the scriptures, you'll be okay. But I think I've learned so much from her that it's just been life-changing. I wouldn't give it up. And I would encourage people not to give up lightly.